two most important people on a set to an actress were the director and the cameraman, but especially the cameraman. Because if you had a cameraman who understood your face thoroughly and knew just how to light you, of course you came out dreaming you were going to hang on to him. Garbo just wouldn't let Daniels go for anything in the world.
The job of a cameraman like William Daniels was to make the star look beautiful, to transform a girl into a goddess. Garbo. The first close-up ever filmed. Fred Ott's Sneeze, 1894. Filmed here in the first studio especially built for moving pictures by Thomas Edison. Edison claimed to have invented the motion picture. His cameraman photographed anything that moved. They went to Pennsylvania and filmed the Black Diamond Express. Edison always copyrighted the result. The film had sprocket holes to hold it steady in the camera. He copyrighted those, too. Rivals were forced to invent other ways of moving their pictures. The American Mutoscope and Biograph Company succeeded in building a camera which evaded Edison's patents.
So the Biograph camera perforated its own film as it was making the scene. And if you ever heard a racket in your life, you can imagine what this was. And dirt all over the place and everything else.
As it was cranked, the camera punched holes in the film, throwing out the waste like confetti. Cumbersome as it was, this camera was to play a major part in the development of cinematography, for it was with it that the team of Griffiths and Bitzer made their first short films. To take these traveling shots, the camera, however cumbersome, had to travel too. The early cameras were marvels of optical engineering. The new models were smaller and easier to handle. The wooden Pathé came from France. The Bell & Howell of 1912 became the standard American studio camera. The Oakley's gyroscopic gears made it ideal for action. The Mitchell of 1920 was so sophisticated that it's still in use. Motors were unreliable. Cameramen cranked by hand. To sustain a constant speed took practice. Each had to work out his own technique.
I used to try to do it with a watch. Second-hand watch and do like this. That didn't work so well. until finally I hit upon an idea that has yet to fail me or anyone else that uses it. And that is to memorize a tune of some kind, anything that you're very familiar with. Now, I had an operatic background, so it was no trouble for me to remember the Anvil chorus from Trovatore. So whenever I was turning a camera, what was going on in my head at the same time was tum tum ta tum ta tum ta tum.
101. Normal. That's a normal crank speed. That gives you a foot a second. Now, if you want to speed up the action, of course, you slow it down and make it slower. And if you want to slow the action down, you make it faster.
Audiences enjoyed the effect of simple camera tricks like undercranking. In this early comedy, an inventor demonstrates a cure for lazy workmen. The workmen move normally. The inventor moves very, very slowly. The cameraman then undercranks and speeds up all the action. In the Nickelodeon era, the speed would vary from theater to theater. For most, projectors were also cranked by hand. Grant Whiteock made friends with his local projectionist.
Well, I used to go up and visit him, and in those days they ran mostly westerns and outdoor pictures, and he'd say, run the machine while I run out and get a beer. As a boy, I thought it was great fun to go up there, and while no one was around, I could control the speed, and this was great fun for about 5 minutes. This was control of the thing. It was power.
Comedian Snub Pollard parodied this hazard. Undercranking the camera to speed up the action was useful in dramatic pictures, too. Before the days of back projection, rolling shots like these had to be filmed from camera platforms built on the front of the car. On these flimsy wooden platforms, the cameraman's life was literally in the hands of the driver. Byron Haskin and his assistant prepared for a scene in a gangster film.
Frank Kesson and I were set up in the platform out front, and Al worked the grip, had spent 2 or 3 hours putting this platform on after we were shooting other scenes. So we got into this thing, and Duke Green was driving, and we started down. Now, we're riding backwards and cranking about 12 on this thing to give it a little zip and so forth. And we get to the first turn, and Duke Green did that, and nothing happened. Al Work had used the steering knuckles down there as part of the stuff he put the ropes around, and this car wouldn't steer at all. And we were going about 50 miles an hour by this time, and we go boom over the curb, which is about that high, and down amongst the boulders of the Arroyo Seco, tumbling and rolling. I am here. I have a few scars on my leg to prove this, what happened. But those were common, ordinary risks that you took as a cameraman in those days.
Whether they were shooting features or newsreels, cameramen accepted danger as a part of their job. Insurance companies charged them a higher premium than any other technician. Despite pressure of the wind, despite vertigo, the cameraman had to keep cranking at a steady speed. Audiences who gasped at dangerous stunts never gave the cameraman a thought. But he had to work out a way of shooting them. And if a human fly was climbing a building, the cameraman had to be up there with him. One film went so far as to celebrate the courage of its cameraman with a special dedication. The whaling sequences were shot from open boats, and cameraman Alexander Penrod and Paul Allen shared the danger with the harpoon crew. Alexander Penrod was also the cameraman on this story of the seal hunters of Labrador. Dynamite was used to break the ice. An accidental explosion blew up the ship and killed Penrod and many of the crew. Only his pictures survived. D.W. Griffith took his company on location in the depths of winter and filmed in the teeth of a storm. The cameraman was Billy Bitzer, the star, Lillian Gish.
Griffith saw the icicles forming and how heavy and snowbound my face was, all plastered with snow as it melted. He wanted Billy to put it on film, and he yelled to get that face, and Billy said, "I will if the oil in the camera hasn't frozen."
Lillian Gish played an unmarried mother, forced into the storm when her secret is discovered. She stumbles towards the river just as the ice breaks up, the famous ice flow sequence. With Lillian Gish enduring intense cold on the White River was her co-star Richard Barthelmess. The cameramen had to get it right first time. It was dangerous work, wrote one. The light was horrible, the winds raw, but we shot the stuff and the whole world knows it was good.
We had no exposure meters, and we had to do it by eye and experience. I mean, it's presumably, I suppose, the same way as a housewife or a lady would want to make a cake. after she gets the first recipe and follows it through, she could make it blindfolded from then on. Just take a pinch of this and a pinch of that. And it's just second nature.
It was achievement enough for Bitzer to get results like this in daylight, but Griffith also demanded the battle scenes be staged at night.
Bitzer crawled all over the Babylonian set and placed these 3-minute flares in such a position that they would not blind the camera. It was a hot afternoon. It was bright as could be. I had no, how could he know? Well, the answer is he couldn't. He had to deduce.
Darkness fell.
And we said, light them up, and the little lights came on of these fuses from place to place. Then another little flare of light, that was the lighting part of these fuses. And suddenly the whole thing came on, brilliant, bright as day, all over, every shadow against a light. It was the most magnificent thing I'd ever seen, and it had all been done on theory in daylight without one thing to guide. That's why I maintained then, and I still say, Bitzer was absolutely the king of them all.
G.W. Billy Bitzer was a pioneer. He came into the business at the beginning. He had the good fortune to work with D.W. Griffith. Bitzer was the technician who put Griffith's ideas onto celluloid. He created striking effects using nothing but natural light.
Griffith used to complain that he couldn't see eyes, and everything in film, I think, to this day, depends upon eyes. They tell the story better than the words. And one day they were having lunch, and someone didn't bring an old red tablecloth, they brought a white one. And as the sun moved through the lunch above them, it reflected light up into the faces, and Griffith called to Billy Bitzer, said, Billy, come over here. Look at this, look at their eyes, look at their faces. And he said, why, yes, that's a reflected light. And that was the beginning of the use of reflectors.
Tablecloths and sheets continued to be used until reflectors became a standard item of equipment.
Well, a cameraman always says, look, it's getting a little dark. I mean, this is, I'm losing my light and so forth. But in the early days, we always said to the camera, and that's the light that Griffith waited for. That soft, that magic hour light. Every close-up that was ever taken of Lillian Gish and Mae Marsh, etc., and Dorothy Gish, and everything was taken in the magic hour light until it got too dark. So it became very famous. That was the light Griffith waited for.
For this effect, with Lillian Gish and Henry Walthall, Bitzer used a mirror to reflect the sun's last rays. The studios on the East Coast were also lit by daylight, but lacking the Californian sunshine, they were often dependent on artificial light. Floodlights were rigged over the sets. They were not very flattering to actresses.
The first lighting in the Edison studio were just top lights, and as any cameraman knows, that just top lighting it would make a baby look like an old hag. Really and truly, just bring out all the worst part of you.
One or two adventurous cameramen copied the lighting they saw on the stage. Theatrical productions like those of David Belasco were celebrated for their dramatic lighting effects. When Belasco's stage designer Wilfred Buckland was brought to Hollywood to work with Cecil DeMille, he insisted on artificial lighting. He and cameraman Alvin Wyckoff could create a complete set with lighting alone. The lights were called Klieg lights. They improved the look of films at a price. Klieg eyes.
Klieg eyes are things that happen to people when they look, say, into the sunlight. With staring into the sunlight, you get a burn. And the ultraviolet light from this great amount of light burned all the people because it was unprotected.
Well, people's eyes used to get just burnt, blood red. And I was laid up, I know, one time for about 3 days. I couldn't, it's just like somebody has taken sand and thrown it in your eyes. That's how it felt. And they used to use castor oil, put castor oil in the eyes to ease the pain.
You take a raw potato and chop it up and put it between 2 pieces of gauze and make a bandage and bandage the eyes.
You'd be in bed with it. You'd have your face bandaged, your eyes bandaged up, you know. And then after that, wear dark glasses, which would help a little bit when you finally did get out, you know.
Later on, they found the cause, and they made laws in which you have to have a sheet of glass. Ordinary window glass would stop the ultraviolet light, and you wouldn't have the effects of it. So it got to be a state law that you had to have a glass in front of an arc light, an open arc light. But we didn't know that at the time. And while we got plenty of exposure and all that business, they also had an awful time with the people because they couldn't work for several days because it was so painful.
Open stages in California were all rapidly converted to artificial light. But exhibitors made it plain they didn't want fancy lighting. All they were interested in were pictures that looked bright and clear on their screens.
We called it furniture lighting. And so then you'd bust a 90 amp spot over the top of your magazines to bring the star out of this mishmash, and that was your accomplishment. A completely revolutionary concept came on with Sight's Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
John Seitz formed a partnership with the great pictorial director, Rex Ingram. As important to them as the story was the look of the film.
Seitz lit the walls. He got his definition from all the planes of the set. He would have deep shadows on one side, light up the wall behind. In fact, he was a sort of a student of Rembrandt.
Cameramen relied on the skill of the laboratory. Their best friends were their laboratory contacts. In Seitz's case, Fred Gage.
And Gage would get this piece of film into his lab at night and pull it out of the tank at 3 minutes. There's nothing on it. And he would keep forcing it, and eventually get a staggering little image of some kind, which is exactly what Seitz wanted. I went in the laboratory one day, and Fred says, "Come on over in the set. I want to talk to Seitz. His stuff is getting awful weak." And so we went on this sort of a long corridor with arches and leading to some dungeon. Seitz was down in the set tinkering with a lamp. And Fred says, "All right, Johnny, now let's turn them on and I'll look through and see what I think. You're getting very weak." Johnny says, "They're already on." Yeah, really, It was so low, you had to grope your way around the set.
Sites also used low-key lighting in Ingram's Scaramouche, as effectively in the close-ups as in the long shots. Alice Terry, Louis Stone.
Seitz was one of the true geniuses of filmmaking. Not just a photographer, he was tremendously imaginative, tremendously impressive to me as a young cameraman and to most of the other boys in the business at the time.
One of these young men was George Folsey.
And I began to look at photographic exhibitions and photographic magazines. I began to read about how portrait painters painted and how Leonardo da Vinci worked only in the late part of the day when the sun is gone, or he would put up big canvas shields and work underneath those in the full daytime. And he painted those things in the softest kind of light. And I did all of the things that the other cameramen did until I found my way. I began to try to incorporate that softness and that quality. And I think it helped me a great deal, particularly in photographing women.
That softness was achieved by placing a fine gauze in front of the lens. By the time the cameraman saw a star like Leatrice Joy, a team of people had been at work. Makeup artists, manicurists, hairdressers, costume designers, dressmakers. But the ultimate responsibility for the way the star appeared on the screen rested with the cameraman. The word often used to describe Greta Garbo was luminous. A tribute to Garbo, it was also a tribute to the cameraman who photographed practically all her films, William Daniels. Director Fred Niblo, Garbo's co-star Conrad Nagel, cameraman William Daniels. Impossible. But the cameraman had to be able to do the impossible. No one could do this shot of Colleen Moore until a magician appeared, cameraman Hans Koenigskamp, who specialized in comedy effects.
And he said, all right, give me the girl, and let me alone, and I'll give you the shot. So he went off in the corner of the stage and put up some drapes to make them private, and this, that, and the other, and he split screen with her right down the center of the face, and they timed the eyes going here and there.
One side was exposed, then the film was wound back in the camera, and the other side exposed. Colleen Moore was as delighted by the trick as the audience. Mary Pickford's favorite cinematographer was Charles Rocher. He had to cope with another kind of split-screen shot. Little Lord Fauntleroy returns home and kisses his mother. Mary Pickford played Little Lord Fauntleroy. The problem for Rocher was that Mary Pickford played the mother as well. An ordinary double exposure was not enough. It seems simple, yet no one had done it before. The problem was for Mary Pickford to move behind her own image. Rocher shot it in two sections. He photographed Mary Pickford as the mother, then had a silhouette, or matte, painted to match the mother on glass. The glass was then mounted on a camera platform which was weighted with steel girders to ensure absolute steadiness. The whole contraption was then enclosed in black cloth to ensure that no light fell on the glass. With the image of the mother now on film, Rocher then exposed the other side, adding a small shadow for good measure. All special effects had to be done in the camera on the one negative, and it always fell to the assistant cameraman to keep an exact record of the exposed film to the precise frame. Weeks might elapse between shots. George Folsey began as an assistant.
I would tape a copy of the numbers inside the can that I put the film in. I would write another set of those numbers in a book, and I would write another set of them and put them in an iron box with a key, which I kept. So I had 3 copies of that. I would do this after I got through work at night. I had all those numbers to catch, and I had to be sure I didn't make any mistake, because if it was wrong, they'd have to do it all over again. It would be absolutely spoiled.
This applied even to simple dissolves, for they also had to be done in the camera, with the degree of precision that is apparent in this montage of a department store.
It always amazes me now to think that the trust that they put in the 17, 19-year-old kids' hands.
At the beginning, trick photography was just a game. Because the Battle of Santiago Bay had occurred without benefit of camera in 1898, it was later faked by a couple of pioneers, J. Stuart Blackton and Albert E. Smith, the heads of the Vitagraph Corporation. Here, in the 1930s, they show how they did it. Models or miniatures were generally all too obvious on the screen, and filmmakers avoided them whenever they could. Louis Selznick used miniatures for this catastrophe. Vitagraph, on the other hand, destroyed a real passenger train. ideal was a subtle combination of full-size sets and special effect. For Robin Hood, starring Douglas Fairbanks, a castle was constructed, the largest set yet built. Fairbanks had feared it was too large. Later, he changed his mind. The castle had to be larger still. The solution was a glass shot. Taller towers, loftier battlements were painted on a plate of glass. The glass shot was developed by Ferdinand Pinney Earle. Once the new scenery had been painted on glass, the glass was placed in front of the camera and lined up precisely with the existing scene. A castle could be conjured up for a single shot. Producers who knew nothing of the technique were horrified at the money they thought had been spent on sets. For The Sainted Devil, the front of Paramount Studios at Astoria, Long Island, became an Argentinian hacienda. With a plate of painted glass, the cameraman could invent a Mexican landscape, recreate a Spanish city, a Hungarian town. For all its effectiveness, the glass shot had one disadvantage. It was flat. Shadows on it were fixed. It could only be filmed when they matched the real shadows. Something else was called for. This shot, from another Fairbanks film, The Gaucho, uses glass. It also involves a process known as the hanging miniature. It represents a collaboration between the cameraman, art department, and special effects men. Because the hanging miniature, like this castle, was three-dimensional, it could be used in changing light conditions, when the shadows on the model would match those on the set, built several hundred feet away. And with a glass shot for the sky, the illusion is complete. The most spectacular use of the hanging miniature occurred when Universal made The Hunchback of Notre Dame with Lon Chaney. Victor Hugo's novel about the grotesque bell ringer was set in medieval Paris. Universal built most of it.
It was a terrific piece of construction those days. Not only the cathedral, but the whole square around it, which was called the Parvis de Notre Dame. All the buildings surrounding it were constructed exactly according to the way they were at the end of the 15th century.
Universal also claimed they had built the Cathedral of Notre Dame in its entirety, a job that took the original builders 82 years. Nevertheless, their cathedral was convincing.
Of course, the top, only the three doors were actually built on the set. Exact reproduction with every statue, you know, all those doors reproduced faithfully. Then from the Gallery of Kings, which is on top of that, from there on, it was a miniature.
For the most expensive picture of the entire silent era, the Goldwyn Company went on location to Italy. Some scenes were shot in Technicolor. When Metro merged with Goldwyn, the new company, MGM, changed both star and director. Ramon Navarro now played Ben-Hur. Fred Niblo was the chief director. MGM realized the success of the new company depended on Ben-Hur. They therefore invested in it every resource Hollywood money could buy. Yet they still needed something startling to help make the film a hit. Once again, the cameramen joined forces with the art directors. By now, they had the skills to make Ben-Hur what the company needed. The epic of all epics. They brought in Frank Williams to use his new Williams process for the collapse of the Roman palace. They built full-size galleys in Italian shipyards. Italy itself was torn by political dissent. Strikes and riots delayed the production. A final disaster drove the company away. One galley caught fire too soon. Extras jumped overboard. Few could swim. They were rescued, but it was the last straw, and it ended the Italian location. Louis B. Mayer, the head of the studio, ordered director Fred Niblo to bring the entire production back to Culver City, where new sets were built, supervised by art directors Cedric Gibbons, Horace Jackson, and Arnold Gillespie. The call went out for thousands of extras. The chariot race was about to be shot. Assistant directors were drafted in to cope with the crowds. One was William Wyler.
Each assistant was put in charge of a section and given a number of signals. The communication was through signals, which meant you had to have your section get up and chair, or sit down, or whatever the direction was.
MGM could not afford to build a set as big as the original Circus Maximus, but they needed to show vast crowds. The art directors and the cameramen devised a brilliant solution. It remained a closely guarded secret, and none of them has publicly admitted it until now. A hanging miniature with a difference.
So the hanging miniature was quite close to the camera itself. It was probably 12 or 14 or 15 feet away from the camera. And the lower portion of the hanging miniature, of course, tied in structurally to the full-size set, which was quite several hundred feet beyond.
These private snapshots show that the miniature stands were filled with miniature people, dolls. But dolls don't move.
In this particular case, there had to be animation because as the people below would rise and cheer at the chariot race going on, the people that were represented by these small little miniature figures above had to also rise and be animated. Each little doll was mounted on a dowel, which went up and down through a hole in the bench, the little miniature tiny benches, and they were activated by cams and on signal while we could make the people rise or sit down.
It was even possible for cameras to pan over the hanging miniatures, adding to the illusion that the entire set was real. MGM employed these 42 cameramen on the chariot race, more than had ever been used before, more than Hollywood would ever use again. Second unit director Reeves Eason was in charge of the race. He planned weeks of close-ups, but for the first great day, he deployed his cameramen all over the stadium, cameras on towers like oil derricks, cameras concealed inside the statues. cameras hidden behind soldiers' shields. Cameras on mobile platforms, on special camera cars. Ben-Hur, Ramon Navarro. Masala, France's ex-bushman, in a race to the death.
The opening day, all the VIPs in Hollywood were invited out to see this wonderful set and this wonderful display of horsemanship and so on. Cowboys mostly were driving the chariots.
And all the aristocrats of the industry were all there. Doug Fairbanks and Mary Pickford, all of the great stars of Talmadge. Everybody was there to see this great race, and it was dull. They went around and they went around. They sort of protected themselves. And Eddie Mannix had the idea that to get a little something into it, that the guys needed a little spurring, so he offered $5,000 for the guy that would win the race.
Accident happened that particular day that hadn't been planned at all. Two chariots tangled, and there was a pile of horses and chariots. And the other chariots coming down, the Spina couldn't see what had happened just around the corner, so they all plowed directly into this mess, and it was quite a mess. I was on a hanging miniature up right where I had a perfect bird's eye view of this thing happening. Some extra came rushing out to try to stop the oncoming chariots because he could see what had happened. Of course, that spoiled that particular part of the film. I'm not too sure whether they were able to take him out optically or not because they used a lot of that footage.
The extra who can just be glimpsed was assistant director Henry Hathaway.
That I was out there trying to wave the guys down coming, but they weren't going to stop. They wanted to win. And the fortunate part, the white horses came around, and for some reason, I think Bob was in that chariot, and he got around him, but he got through, so here we were safe with the accident because the white got by us. We could finish the race in other shots.
The chariot race was one of those scenes that made Hollywood synonymous with excitement. A triumph for the technicians, a triumph for the cameramen.